Hello and welcome to The Wandering Peacock. This channel is a channel where I do strange and unusual do-it-yourselves with stone and tile and all sorts of stuff. So if you like that stuff, please subscribe to the channel and I'm sure you'll be entertained. So today I'm going to be doing a project that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm going to be telling a story with it. A true story, my story, where I associate the project I'm doing with something rather negative. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. You really want to do something, anything, but like you associate the thing you want to do with, not something so great. And this is exactly that. And I've always wanted to do bottle projects, where they take wine bottles and you make all sorts of stuff. But I saw a bottle project that kind of related to a crazy, horrible crime. And it kind of made me not want to do bottle projects. What I saw was a bottle wall in a town called Gaylordsville, Connecticut. And the bottle wall related to some of the other things that this person built that I associate and with crazy crimes that happened. So I'm going to tell that story and build my bottle project. I'm going to go against all my associations and just do it and tell you why I have a thing with bottle projects. So enjoy. I'm not going to be doing a bottle wall. I'm going to be doing a bottle floor. The reason is I actually need a floor. I have a tool shed that needs to be secure from critters and rats and all these animals. And I'm going to be pouring cement by hand, not doing to code, which is 4 feet down, but just something of a barrier. And the job is going to be extremely monotonous, so I decided to break it up by doing something creative. And I've seen inlaid bottles in cement flooring, sometimes with LEDs, and I thought, hey, let's give it a go. So my story is a true story, and it's actually two crazy stories that happened like right in front of each other, like 50 years later. It happened on a road called Route 7 in a town, again, called Gaylordsville. And if you look up the second crime, it won't say Route 7 because basically, like, there's this Route 7, this road connected to Route 7. There was a stop sign that happened like in conjunction to Route 7, so I'll name the other road. But it happened right in front of this building that has to do with the first situation. And they kind of all relate to each other. And the building has to do with the first situation. The guy who made the building also made the bottle wall. And they're kind of two stories that are eerily the same in their creepiness. And I'll get to that. But I'll first start with the first story. Now, the first story is like old wives' tale-ish. Like, it's like, do you remember Joe Schmo back in the day type stuff? My stepfather told it to me as soon as I moved in. He's giving me like talking about the town. And he's like, you see that building over there? That building is called a spite house. Now, I first should explain what a spite house is. And I had no idea what this was, spite house. It is what it is. Spite, you're spiting that person. You're spiting the town. So it's basically erecting some sort of thing that has no purpose but to piss off your neighbors and your family. Not your family, your neighbors and your community. Now, he made this like tower thing. It's called a spite house, like it's supposed to make everyone angry, I guess, but I kind of like it. When you drive on Route 7, you'll see it. It's overlooking the river. It's super cute, but cute in a way that like you left out a China doll in the rain for like 5 years cute, like the cute stuff you see in horror movies. So it used to be pink and it used to look like a rundown dollhouse overlooking the river, overlooking Route 7. And it was like like one little building on top of another building on top of another little building, but the scale is like you can't live in there. Like maybe like children of the dam could live in there maybe, but it's not to scale the actual house. It's the scale of like, I don't know, despite everyone. It's a scale despite everyone. So nothing about the structure makes like sense in a practical way, except for to like be like, what is that? And it like you drive by and you're like, what is that? Like everyone's like, oh, I saw that. What was that? It's a spite house. And the story behind the spite house, whew, not a good story. Now, I don't know if you live in a town like where it's like, I guess like a little town or some sort of, like there's stories within stories. The story on the surface, I guess there's a plaque. He made this structure to like spite everyone. But the story that's not in the plaque, well, that's the real story. And it relates to the crime that happened 50 years later. So it's really creepy. And again, how does this relate to bottle projects? The guy also built this like crazy awesome bottle wall. So I saw this house and I saw the bottle wall and I was like, I built my association. I was like, I don't know about that. I want to be the first one to say this. Putting LEDs in wide bottles embedded in the cement floor is probably not the best idea for a number of reasons. First, it's not going to last forever. That said, nothing lasts forever. I'm not going to have it on all the time, so it's going to be a special occasion thing, so it'll probably last long enough for my entertainment purposes. Second, if a connection breaks, the chances of it all just not working are pretty high, or sections of it working and other sections not working, especially since I'm using a lot of LEDs that are kind of old because I'm kind of recycling stuff I'm not using anymore. So what I'm doing now is I'm caulking in the LEDs in the wine bottles, so to just give it some more security. Another thing that's a bad idea is the animals like to burrow under things, and they have been doing that under my shed, so they might continue and eat the wires. So with all that said, this might be an epic fail, but you know, it's not taking that much time away from the monotony of laying a ton of cement by hand. So I'm going to enjoy myself a little bit on a project that would actually be really boring if I didn't do something like this. And that makes it all worth it. So when I'm working with this big cluster of LEDs, I'm thinking, I can't judge. This is insane. I can't judge spite houses and other people's bottled walls, no matter how crazy the story is. Because this is insane. Hopefully it'll all work out though. So let me go back to the spite house. So the spite house was erected, what we know why it was erected was because this guy had a daughter, an adopted daughter, and the state took the adopted daughter away. So he built this house as like a, I hate you state for taking my adopted daughter away. Apparently there's like a plaque and everything, like that much we know about the story. What is rumor is what my stepfather in the town, everyone in the town says. And this is, again, this is a rumor. But the rumor is interesting because what happened 50 years later right in front of it. So the rumor is that basically the daughter was taken away because he molested her and impregnated her. Yeah. So he impregnated his daughter, according to rumor, and the state took it away. He erected the spite house. There was a noose that he put in the spite house, which makes sense because the scale is kind of like more to hang someone, I guess. So my stepfather swears there was a noose in there, and it was all for to hang the cops who took away his daughter, who he impregnated. So that's like the rumored story. But the actual situation that we do know is the daughter was taken away. We don't know why, by the state, and this guy was upset and he built this thing because of that situation. So I don't know. I wasn't alive then. but that's the story of the Spite House. So I've always known the story of the Spite House and the stone wall since I moved into town. But the next story, it's worse. And that one we know everything about. So I got this idea from seeing how they do mosaic tiling in Morocco. So there's a technique where you lay the mosaics sort of upside down on a piece of wood, and then you fill in the cement around it, or the mortar, and you flip it over, and then you get like this sort of clean look. So I'm kind of doing that with bottles. I'm placing the bottles on a piece of wood, and then I'm taking cement and I'm putting it around the bottles to secure as like a tile. So I'm doing these circular tiles, essentially, of illuminating bottle lights, and then putting the cement around it. So I decided to use a special kind of it's a fast set cement, and it's really, really like Herculean in how it strengthens the bond. It's almost like a gluey cement. So I'm using that, and I'm first mixing it kind of thick. So, and I'm mixing it all around the bottles to hold the bottles in place. I kind of want it to be like tactile, like kind of, so it sticks together sort of like a ball, so you can throw it up on a ball, and that is like the ideal. You don't want it too dry or else it'll crumble. You don't want it too wet or else it'll droop. And then sometimes I mix the cement and I get it really watery, and then I pour it over. And between the two of building up and then pouring in the cement, I really get this nice illuminating tile, and hopefully this technique will work. So I haven't seen that done besides the Moroccan tile stuff, but hopefully it'll work for my bottled LEDs. So the second part of this story is really terrible. I mean, and that is something you could look up. So everything takes place in Gaylordsville, Connecticut. But if you look up this particular crime, which you can, it does not take place in Gaylordsville. It won't say it does, even though it did. It says it took place in New Milford, which, for the record, Gaylordsville, is New Milford. It's a section of New Milford. It's like saying something happened in New York City, but it took place in Soho. But yes, they both are in Gaylordsville. Again, the people died in this crime right in front of the Spite Tower. Like, it almost like made a cross with where they are, in front of a river. So how I tie into the story, I guess, is I drove by it. I drove by the crime scene. I have to drive by the Spite Tower almost every day because I live in the town. Gaylordsville is in between where I live and where I get my groceries, my clothing, all my cement. This time I was traveling in my truck to my local quarry to get some stones for my moon gate, which is one of the videos on this channel. So I was driving to get stones, and I drove by the Spite Tower, and right across from the Spite Tower was like so many cops. It was a crime scene. I didn't really see much. I saw that it wasn't good, whatever it was, but it was in front of the stop sign and there was tons of cops. And I went to the quarry and I was like, oh my God, there's something on Route 7. Just drove by it. Seems pretty bad. And it wasn't until a week later, because I'm not a news person, and then especially I wasn't, I heard about what happened. And it kind of, and how it related to the Spite Tower was so creepy. And you could Google both these things. You could Google Gaylordsville Spite Tower, Spite House rather, It looks like a tower. And you could Google this crime, but like none of the news outlets, like you could find true crime documentaries on both of them, like kind of put it together that it happened in front of each other. But like since I was driving by, I saw the crime scene and then I saw the spite tower and I was like, wow, that's crazy. As I mentioned before, I decided to do this like Moroccan mosaic where you put the piece of wood on and then you essentially work backwards. So right now I'm flipping over the bottles and in this kind of cement form, everything's stuck together, hoping that I'm not breaking wires while I'm doing it, which is my fear throughout this project. So I'm trying to be as gentle as possible. Sometimes the cement gets over the bottles a little bit. So here's where I see if it actually works. Turning on the LEDs, and so far, so good. It's actually lighting up. So it's not a huge effect, but it is kind of cool. Later, I arrived in where I get my stones, where I used to get my stones, and I talked to the guy who ran the quarry, and he was like, wow, do you remember that, just seeing if it's level, remember that accident you saw last week? Guess what it was? And then I got the whole story, and I was like, wow. So apparently a girl was put up for adoption by her biological parents, and this all happened in like another state. I want to like say Virginia, but it might have been New York or Pennsylvania. Anyways, it was like a state thing. Like she got adopted to another state somewhere, and then she got adopted by a very nice family, and she lived happily ever after. That is until she was 18, and she decided to find her biological parents. And that's when things got very bad. And yeah, it got bad. Now this is the reason I'm doing this crazy bottle project, because pouring concrete is so tedious and boring. This is not a up to code kind of project. I'm just laying something down so animals don't get to my tool shed, and I have more of a secure tool shed. That said, oh my God, it's so boring. Usually when people do things professionally, they get it ordered and they have like this big truck just like plop it in. But this is not a big project. This is not a big project at all. So I'm doing it by hand, which is tedious and annoying. And yeah, that's why I'm doing the bottle project. And I think it's kind of, the more I'm doing it, the more I realize it's kind of cool to experiment with boring projects you don't want to do, and it does make you want to continue. I mean, I'm so excited with the bottle tiles, and when it gets to the cement, I'm like, oh, but I kind of do it. I do the bottle tile and then I do a little cement. So it really breaks down a boring do-it-yourself project. And in that case, I recommend doing anything creative to do that, to break down a project, to make it manageable. That's my whole thing. But I think it might be an insane strategy too, so might not be any words of wisdom. So this girl, when she's 18, she was adopted by a wonderful family in New York, and she decides to find her biological family, which is normal. Like that's, I think that's really normal. And she finds them. There's not much information about the mother. So from what I understand, I think she just found, or she just became close with the father and the grandmother. So the biological father and the grandmother. And I believe she moves in with them. And that's when things start going really bad, because she moves in with them and the father gets a little too close to his daughter. He impregnates her. They have the baby. and then they get married. So I don't know how the law works. Like, I'm not like a legal person, not a lawyer, not into politics that much. But I guess you could, in this case, like, they didn't really get in trouble for having a baby together, father and daughter, but they got in trouble for marriage. So there's like mug shots of them. They both got in trouble for marriage, which I think is kind of, I personally think like he should have just got in trouble because he's the dad, right? But like there's mug shots of this poor thing, you know, getting arrested for marrying her dad, and she's just like, just turned 18. So it's like, so, I don't know, I just didn't really, it's kind of sad. It's really sad. So she marries him, they have the baby, but all's not well, like not nearly well. I guess they have a bad marriage, and she decides she wants to leave her baby with the father and the grandmother. So the grandmother had the custody, not the father, but the father had visitation rights of the baby. And the daughter decides to go back with her adopted family in like upstate New York. So she went back. And meanwhile, the father, the biological father, is not having a good mental state, apparently. And he, you know, takes the baby with him one weekend in North Carolina, I believe. And I don't know if he left the baby or if he killed the baby and left. He did one of those things. Regardless, it's kind of the same thing in my mind, because like you can't just leave a baby and then go up from North Carolina to New York and go on vacation and leave the baby at home for days. It's just not gonna. So the baby passed away, unfortunately, and he went up to New York to see his daughter, and I guess they're driving separate cars when this whole thing went down. I don't know what was going on with fighting. I'm sure there was probably a major backstory that I just don't know. It's not really in the news report that I saw. But what I saw was the aftermath. Anyways, so Gaylordsville is a town bordering New York. So these people live in a town bordering Connecticut. So Gaylordsville is a town in Connecticut bordering New York. So it's like they're next door towns, but you have to cross state lines. And there's this road going into Gaylordsville. Like I said at the beginning, it's like going like I think from New York State into Route 7, which connects like a big chunk of New England. So Route 7's here, this road is here, coming from New York, and the tower is here, and the river, the Housatonic River, is here. The Appalachian Trail is there, which is interesting, but irrelevant. So it's kind of making this like Route 7 road from New York, and then like right at the viewing point of where your car would stop, where their car did stop, you get a view of the Spite house. So they stop their car, and if they looked ahead, they would see like right in front of them, like right across the river and the road, Route 7. So across the river that runs under the road, like right there is the Spite house, like hovering over them. They stop their car with a view of the Spite house. And the biological father shoots the daughter and the adopted father in the head, or like kills them basically, and then runs over to the New York side and shoots himself, I guess. I mean, he commits suicide. So meanwhile, like probably like a few hours after that, I drove by the crime scene. I'm driving to get my stones on Route 7. I look over, I see the Spite house. I look over, I see the stop sign with like a car stopped and like not anything good happening there, and cops all around. Because I'm doing all the cement laying by hand and in increments, and I'm not professional, it's totally uneven, so I had to do a layer of like sand-based cement over the grainy cement so you could walk on it and you're not going to stub your toe. And it's okay. not professional, but it's enough for a tool shed, and it works. So, of course, I was very freaked out by all of this, and I told the guy, wow, how does two things like that happen 50 years later in the same place with the same kind of energy and background? And my core guy, he's like a funny guy. So he laughed and he's like, well, I guess you don't know Gaylordsville. Apparently Gaylordsville is filled with a lot of weird stuff. There's a demonic rocking chair that keeps on rocking. Apparently Chip was friends with the Warrens, which are these couples who are into strange and unusual house hauntings and poltergeists. And so he knew the whole thing about this town. There's like a poltergeist witch called the Green Lady, pet cemetery, Jack the Ripper's wife moved there, according to some. I don't know. It freaked me out. So, yeah, it's a lot. But I decided to make my own future, not have the association anymore of bottle walls in Gaylordsville, and give myself my own association, do my own thing, make my own future. Just ignore it, and hopefully I won't get demonically possessed or anything. If you like this channel, subscribe. I will be doing more videos like this where I'll be telling strange, unusual, true stories and doing a strange, unusual do-it-yourself. So please subscribe to the channel. And I also have an Instagram called Wandering Peacock House, which is an Airbnb I rent out, TikTok with the same name, and I'm going to start a Patreon where I'm going to be giving tours of some of these places. I'm going to do a little video on this where I'm going to show the Spite House and everything that relates to that. So please subscribe and check it out, and have a beautiful day.